Hello there, it's plant update video number 2 for the year, and I am coming to you from our very tiny little greenhouse. I am now a plant mom to many hundreds of little plant babies, and I couldn't be happier about it. So before we get things in the ground, I wanted to take you on a little tour to show you what we've finally settled on. We were away in New York for about 10 days, and unfortunately my sister does not have a green thumb, so we had to replant almost everything that we planted prior to leaving. So some things are a little more advanced than other things at this point, but we'll take you on a tour anyways. We have lots of herbs. We've got the cilantro, the oregano almost died. We might need to replace that one. Sage, this is basil, parsley, rosemary, and then some little itty bitty strawberries back here. I also have a hanging strawberry behind me. And then the reason we're starting to plant today is some of these squash that we got started indoors are getting to the point that they're almost certainly root bound. So they're starting to wilt and we need to get them in the ground urgently. We have some dill. This is another basil plant. We've got some chives, which we were going to plant. I don't think we're going to plant those, but I'll show you why in a second. This is one of our raspberry bushes. So we have a golden raspberry, and then that would mean that this one down here is our red raspberry bush. We've got our blueberries. Way back here hiding, we've got a Concord grape. At the bottom, I've got some mojito mint. My potatoes, which are in these massive buckets, are just starting to come above ground just today, so that's very exciting. We weren't sure they were going to actually sprout. In here, I've got some ginger, but it also hasn't sprouted yet. We'll give it another couple of weeks. Our corn is getting out of control. Again, something it needs to get into the ground today. We've got our corn, some of it's 4 feet tall at this point. I've got some hanging baskets that I started just some flowers in. Some of this stuff back here is mystery because some of our baby plants got moved around, so they are no longer labeled, but we're gonna figure it out. I think some of them are squash, some of them are watermelon. Got a tomato plant. I took one of your suggestions and planted some tomato seeds from the fridge to see what would happen. Nothing's come up there yet. Got some hot peppers, hoping to make some salsa. At the top, we've got, this is our green onion, then some watermelon, and in here we've got some onions and I think some squash, maybe some zucchini or eggplant. And then a bunch of other miscellaneous things, cabbage and leeks and all kinds of other little sproutlings, baby plants that we're gonna get in the ground today. And then let's show you what we're actually working with. When we moved in, there was already this lovely garden bed here with a few things in it, many of which were not edibles, so we've had to figure out what was what. We've got lots of chives, so these are all chives here. And then there's more chives over here. And then what did we decide this was? Thyme. This is thyme, okay. And I think that's the limit to the edible stuff. I thought there was a mint over here too, but I couldn't find it. And then if we come all the way over here, we have what we've started to lay out as our garden bed, putting our perennial herbs in so that they're easy to access and the things that we want to get at so they're close to the front of the garden bed. And thankfully, coming into the garden bed, they've got all of these plants down that it doesn't matter if you walk on them because I'm not good at navigating and I don't like to step on plants. We put on these pavers to separate our rows of plants. They're in the shape of large feet. I don't know where Robbie got them, but they're gonna separate our rows in our garden bed so that I know where's safe to step beyond this point and I'm not gonna trample all of our plants. So we're gonna get a few things laid out and then we'll join back in with you once we have a general idea of where some stuff's going. It's several hours later and I think we've got just about everything planned out where it's going to go, spaced out, giving it appropriate room as much as we can in this smaller garden bed. I mean, it's a big garden bed, but it's pretty small. Starting at the front, we have all of the berries on the left and then all of the herbs on the right. And then coming into the garden bed, against the garage, we have all of the corn, and then we're going to use the squash as ground cover for the corn to keep it cool, which is great. And then on the opposite side on the fence, we have the potatoes, and then we have everything kind of spaced out in between. Things that need a little more space, like cabbage, are in a center row so that it can grow and have its space. Things that need a little bit more attention or we're going to be interacting with more are closer to the front of the garden and closest to the center, like our lettuces. Even though carrots aren't harvested for months from now, we're going to keep those close to one of the feet markers just because you have to thin them out and you have to baby them a little bit. We have 3 potato plants we're going to do in buckets this year, just to see how they work out. They're indeterminate varieties, so it'll take 4 plants in our 32-liter containers. We're going to partially bury those in the ground. Our mint is also going to stay in a container and be buried in the ground because mint can be a little bit aggressive. But other than that, we're going to just do a bit of an experiment this year to see what grows well, what doesn't grow well. And as far as our corn, which we made a big mistake with, we're going to try and isolate the sweet corn in the front yard rather than the backyard, so that we'll at least get a few that are okay, even if the rest get contaminated. So let's move through and get some things in the ground. So we're going to start with the shrubs. When I'm planting any kind of perennial, I usually give it a little bit of bone meal, a little bit of compost, a little bit of topsoil, just so that it's got a good healthy start. We started by asking our friendly neighborhood Robbie to dig us a hole because I'm not very strong. We've got a hole really nice and deep so that the top of the pot is kind of in line with where the ground is, and we're going to kind of pop it out of the pot, just kind of turn it upside down. I'm going to kind of massage the sides of the pot, and the plant will usually just pop right out. And what I learned online is before we get it in the ground, we'll put a little bit of bone meal. We'll mix that with some compost and some dirt. So I'll just grab a little handful, toss it in the hole. So then I'll put in some compost because that's usually a little more acidic. And then I'll put in a little topsoil to mix it all together. And I'll just kind of mix it around a little bit with my hands to make sure that the roots aren't touching only bone meal. And then we'll get the plant again. Break up the roots a little bit with my fingers, just kind of gently, almost massage it, so that when it goes in the hole, it realizes that it can start growing up. In it goes. And we're just gonna kind of push some dirt around it. Dug from our hole, pat it down, and that's it. Our blueberries are in the ground. And we're going to plant a few more shrubs exactly like that. When it comes to aggressive plants, in particular mint, it's a good idea to keep them isolated from the rest of the stuff in your garden. So what I do is I put them in a really nice big pot to limit them. I have lots of holes in the bottom so it has drainage, but the size of the pot is going to prevent it from getting too out of control. I dig a big hole in the ground, I put the pot right in the hole, and then I just pack dirt around it until it's completely buried. So it's still on the same level as everything else in the garden, but it's not going to get out of control. Robbie has now dug me a beautiful trench, and the reason for that is we're planting potatoes, and potatoes need loose soil to actually propagate and give you lots of nice, beautiful tubers. So we dug all of that out. I've put a little bit of topsoil in there, a little bit of compost in there, and then we're gonna mix it with the topsoil that was already in the garden and kind of push everything back into the hole, make sure it's all broken up so that everything's nice and light and fluffy for the potatoes to start growing in. So we have our trench mostly filled back up. We've got a lot of lovely topsoil, some bone meal, some really lovely soil and compost in there. And we've put our potatoes in and placed them about a foot apart, and now we're just gonna load some dirt on top. It's pretty straightforward. They grow in just about anything, although they do like moister soil, so we added in that lovely compost and popped some soil on top, and then we're on to our next vegetable. Here I'm speedrunning, filling in the trench. It's now a week later and we're in the garden for round 2. I have lots of things going in the ground today. We have a very short growing season in Canada, so we have to be very on the ball about when we plant things. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is seed tape. It is an amazing product if you can't see where you're planting, you can't see the seeds, and or if you have mobility issues. It was originally designed for gardeners to make it easier to auto-space your seeds, but it's fabulous for people with a visual impairment or blindness because everything is there for you. It's one thing, you're not going to be fiddling with little tiny things that you can't see, and it's really easy to put in the ground. You can get seed tape for quite a variety of things now. It used to be only carrots, but now I've got seed tape for spinach and beets and carrots and even some lettuces, so it's really a versatile thing that you can grow a lot. The first step when I'm doing anything with seed tape or even just loose seeds is I will get into the ground and I will hoe my line or where my seeds are going. You usually want to know where and how deep something needs to go, but just loosening up the soil is good for just about everything so that it can root well. And I won't do my whole line right now just because I want to show you what's going on. I'll start at one end and I will lay the edge of my seed tape in the bed and just cover it with dirt to hold it down. And then I will slowly unroll the seed tape, and about every foot I'll just cover it in a little bit of dirt so it doesn't get out of hand. And then I'll come back at the very end and completely cover everything up. If you don't know how deep to plant things because you can't read the back of a seed packet, all of that information is easily available with just a simple Google search. To finish this, all I'm gonna do is just take both my hands from either side, kind of cup them together to create a little mound in the middle of dirt just to cover up my seed tape. And then I'll gently pat it down. And it's as simple as that. When it comes to planting germinated or sprouted plants in the ground, depending on how big they are, it's identical to planting a shrub, a seedling, herbs, anything else. I just dig a little hole, plunk it in the ground, pat the dirt around it, and then we're off to the races. So I've got some watermelon here. Wiggle the shovel into the ground, loosen up the soil, create a little hole, join back up with you once I've got this hole. It'll take me a minute or so. And then I find my plant, I tip it upside down into my hand, squeezing the pot a little bit, get it to come out into my hand, into the ground, and then pat the dirt around it. Be gentle, try not to bend the leaves too much. So one of my safe ways while I'm getting them in the ground is I will hold the leaves up between my index finger and middle finger, and then I can come in with my other hand and get the dirt underneath without any worry that I'm going to crush the plant because I'm guarding it with my other hand. When it comes to loose seeds like these beets I've got in my hand, I seed them the exact same way I would if I was seeding them in a pot. So these need to be about 1 inch apart. So I will use one hand as a guide to find the hole and one hand to place the seeds in without a glove on so that I can make sure I'm aligned. And that's how that works. And then I push from the outside to gently cover the beets and then tap once I've pushed from both sides of the trench that I dug. And it usually works pretty well because then I know that the beets are getting covered by dirt and I'm not leaving them on top of the soil. When it comes to my lettuce and my spinach, I stagger plant throughout the summer. So what that means is I start by planting the front half of my row at the beginning, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, I plant the second half or the back half of the same row with new lettuce later so that I'm having lettuce mature at different times throughout the summer. It's hard to keep your lettuce nice all summer long without it getting leggy. So this is my way of keeping it so I always have nice fresh lettuce all the time. And as soon as the front half gets leggy, halfway through the summer, I pull it out and I plant fresh stuff so I have stuff all the way into fall. I'm gonna start with this really interesting lettuce seed tape. I've never seen this before. So I'm gonna just put that in the ground just like I put in the other seed tape. And then once I've reached the back half, I can just tear it off. And then just like everything else, I cover it up with dirt and it's good to go. Sweeping from either side to make sure that I got good coverage. And that's how I do that. We're finished. And just in time too, a storm is blowing in, so all of these plants are gonna get a good water. I'm gonna give them a little bit extra right now just because we put them in the ground. The things that are sprouting are probably a little bit stressed out. So we'll make sure they get a good water. And I know it doesn't look like much now, but in a few months, it's going to look fabulous. So we're gonna check back in maybe in about a month, month and a half and see what's different. Boy, howdy, am I missing my raised garden beds. I forgot just how painful it is to garden on the ground. It makes a world of difference. So if you can get some container beds or some raised beds, it'll save your back and your joints for sure. I think that's about all I have to say for this video. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas, I'd love to hear them. I'm always learning just like you. I hope this video was helpful to someone somewhere and gives you the idea that it is possible to garden if you can't see. It's not perfect. I'm not a perfect gardener, but I don't think anybody is. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, consider subscribing, checking back in, because there will be more videos coming up. If you have questions, by all means, leave those in the comments down below. We can address those in the next video, but that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Bye for now.
Got you hosing down that garden, hosing down the garden with your dirty butt.
Oh. Don't get my dirty butt. Try not to get my dirty butt.
If you turn away from the camera, you're showing your dirty butt.
Okay, I've been sitting in dirt all day. What do you want?
Everything.